troubles and too much sin, test will occur. Running a race we will never win without the word.
Good morning, good day, good evening, good overnight, whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome once again to Just Thoughts. Seeing Vanity. That's what we're going to be talking about today. If I were going to subtitle this, I would probably subtitle it False Prophets, maybe even Lying Divinations. In a short time now, we have seen a massive amount of false prophets rise. This is nothing new. We are told to be on the lookout for this. But we're seeing we're seeing people who call themselves prophets. You know, that's a clue right there. If you have to tell people that you're a prophet, as a singular individual or as a group, if you have to tell people that you're prophets or that you're a prophet, then you're probably not a prophet. And especially when you make claims or you make prophecies which fail, and then you have to backpedal and say, oh, we've just got to wait a little longer, or oh, I didn't understand this, or oh, this or that or the other. There's a plague of people now online claiming to be modern day prophets who claim that God is talking to them daily. I mean, I doubt very seriously, if you go back to the Old Testament prophets, that God spoke to Daniel daily, or that God spoke to Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Isaiah daily. He spoke to them when he spoke to them. But these people are claiming that God is talking to them, that God is giving them this, that they have a word from the Lord. And I've been mentioning this over the past few lectures, and even I've alluded to it. In about the past 3 to 5 lectures, I've made reference to people that are prophesying out of their own hearts. But one of the ways you can tell a prophet is, if a prophet prophesies a thing, then if it aligns with our Father's word, then it should come to pass, unless it's not time for it to come to pass. But the people that are prophesying now are talking of things that are coming to pass now, or should have come to pass and did not. And instead of admitting that they were wrong, now they're ratcheting down even harder and claiming that, quite frankly, they're talking down to people. And they're saying, well, if you don't see it, you're just unable to see it. You're either part of this group that believes in me, or part of another group that is going to come to believe me, or part of a group that will never be able to see the truth. And there's quite a lot of them out there. There's quite a lot of people out there also that are teaching. And they're teaching the same old empty rhetoric that men have been teaching for many, many years now. Only some of them are going into the Greek and Hebrew and somehow completely missing the mark. And it's astonishing when you see this happen. And the only thing you can put it down to, I suppose, is that our Father has blinded some. You know, I would never claim to be a prophet, even if God had spoken to me personally, which God never has spoken to me audibly, personally. Our Father speaks to me from His Word, okay, as He speaks to all of us who study His Word. In other words, it's written. So if it's written, then that's what's going to come to pass. But even if God had spoken to me personally, I dare say that I would not come out and just say, I am a prophet, and you should listen to me, and whatever I say is going to come to pass. Because there's a lot of people that are saying just exactly that. And then when their so-called prophecies, which they claim are going to come to pass fail, then they claim that they were, much like politicians do, that they were taken out of context. I heard one so-called self-proclaimed prophet say the other day that he was learning how to be a prophet. Okay, you don't learn how to be a prophet. If God speaks to you and gives you a word, then it's not something that's going to fail. It's going to come to pass, and it's going to be real. I'm not going to name any names in this because I feel it's not fruitful to do so. I know sometimes I will pick on some of the bigger guys that are bringing in money for churches and even do a little impression of them. But I'm not going to do that today. It's not really fruitful. There are so many that have sprung up now that 2 months ago probably most of us had never even heard of. But I have been seeing them more and more claiming that certain events were going to come to pass. Some related to our president and the presidency and blah, blah, blah. You probably all know. And now that those things did not come to pass, they're not backing off. They're not changing their story. They're not admitting they were wrong. Now they're saying, well, what it is it's still going to happen. And when it happens, then you'll all see. Now, in thinking about all of these things that they're preaching, let me give you a little bit of background on what it is they're saying. Many are claiming that Trump is going to lead us into a new golden era. And I've talked about this before in previous lectures. This is what the QAnons were putting out. In other words, Q and the QAnon groups were putting out. That President Trump was God's anointed, and that President Trump was going to lead us into this new dawn, this new time, this new revival. Okay? But that kind of flies into stark contrast with what's written in our Father's Word about these end times. And why does it fly in stark contrast? Well, because deception is going to grow. That's what the Word of God says. In other words, it doesn't say anything about a better time until Christ comes. Now, I am sure that when Satan gets here as the Antichrist, people will for a time, act a lot more civil, a lot more peacefully to each other. And I say for a time because they're going to think Christ is here. You know, it's going to be kind of like when the teacher comes back into the room and a bunch of unruly kids suddenly quiet down. Or when mom comes home and, you know, you've been doing something you shouldn't do and you have to straighten up real quick. When Satan shows up claiming to be Christ, that is exactly what I expect to happen. I expect that people are going to calm down. Everyone's going to think Jesus is here. Everyone's going to be happy. Everyone's going to be yelling in praise, dancing in the streets, and blah, blah, blah. But that's going to be short-lived. As we know, Satan will only have 5 months here. But there are many people out there now not only prophesying that these great things that are going to happen, this new revival, this time of peace for Christians where they can get out and teach, and this time of learning, which I'm not saying that the Trump we're in is not a learning Trump, but what we can expect to see actually is for there to be more massive deception. And I kind of feel like that these people that are prophesying now are setting up for the time when the Antichrist gets here, because they're talking of this great revival, this great awakening, a time when America is going to be blessed and it's going to return to an era more like it was in days of old when we had peaceable times and America was profitable and government stayed out of your business and you didn't have a feeling that Big Brother was watching you and there were not so many conspiracy theories because it was not necessary for them to be so. Excuse me. What I'm seeing is people spouting prophecies right and left, and those prophecies failing. What I'm seeing is other people who claim to be called of the Lord teaching and putting out videos that begin very well. They claim that Jesus is the Messiah. They call him Yeshua HaMashiach. They go into Hebrew and even unlock certain things, and in that they do well. But then the big letdown comes when they speak of the rapture. It's like they understand certain things, but then they get to the point where they're talking about the end of this earth age, and they're setting dates. We've got date setters. We've got people saying that the earth is going to end in 2030 and that Christ is going to come back sometime before that and get his church. But again, that flies in stark contrast to what our Father's Word says and what Christ told us about the events that would consummate the end of this earth age. So don't be taken in by smooth talkers. Don't be taken in by people that look like they know what they're talking about in Hebrew and in Greek. And that would include myself. You know, I'm gonna include myself in that group. Don't take my word for it. Go and study for yourself. Ask our Father to show you the truth about what is happening. Ask our Father to keep you from the hour of temptation. You know, you are the captain of your own ship. There's a lot of people that disagree with me on a lot of things, and some of them I've had some debates with, and others will just get on there and say some nasty things. Other people are civil and will simply talk to me and say, I'm in disagreement with you. And I can respect that more than I can respect people, you know, using filthy language and getting angry. Not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's a given. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. This is why I tell you to go study for yourself and not just to take my word for it. Now, there are certain things that are laid out that are, you know, from my vantage point would seem to be pretty obvious that other people don't seem to see. And that's fine. You know, that doesn't mean that you can't study with this ministry or that, you know, anything bad is going to happen as far as my feelings. We will simply have to agree to disagree and, you know, let God judge us in the end and you know, pray that God finds favor that we were at least trying to learn his word. But as it is right now, there are a massive amount of new people out there calling themselves prophets. And they're in groups of 3s, groups of 4s, some of them claiming they've got thousands of people that are sharing the same visions and dreams that they're having. And I'm beginning to think to myself, well, if you're all having this dream and you're all prophesying these things, I mean, there's a lot of people out there calling themselves prophets, but there's not, you know, thousands all agreeing with each other and each have their own channel and each spouting the same thing. I've seen maybe 40 or 50 people, I guess, around that number, all getting together and claiming certain things are going to come to pass. You know, they claim that Biden would never be elected. They claim that Trump would have a second presidency. I am careful in this not to take sides until events happen. And the reason being that the Kenites are cunning. We know the Kenites are cunning, and if they think that Donald Trump is their best bet, that's who they're going to use. If they think that Joe Biden is their best bet, then that's who they're going to use. But no matter who is the president, no matter what party they claim to represent or what people they have got a following from, the same events are going to happen. In other words, our Father's Word is going to play out exactly as it is written. It's not going to change. And when we see things written in the Bible telling us that there's going to be a great falling away, that the transgressors must come to the full, that things are going to get worse and worse, that the birth pangs are going to get closer to closer, which means the pain increases, which means there's going to be more stress on Christians, then I don't see this great revival, this great awakening coming that people are saying is coming. And it doesn't make sense in the scheme of our Father's Word for that to happen, unless, of course, you look at it from the point of, well, what if all these people, whether knowingly or unknowingly, prophesying out of their own hearts and mind, are building up to the greatest deception of all time? In other words, they're talking about a great revival, a great time of peace for Christians, a great time of tranquility, and a new time of learning. And that is kind of setting the table for Satan to come and swoop everybody up. Now, I personally think that things are going to continue to get worse. We now have a president in office that is going to undo American ideals, that is to say, constitutional American Christian ideals. And I don't see that changing. And not that Trump was pushing forward too many Christian ideals. I mean, kudos to Trump for claiming that Christ is his Lord and Savior, and for, standing against abortion to a point, and speaking out for the rights of Christians and the divine providence of God, and blah, blah, blah. But there's many people that do that from the pulpit daily, and then they teach the rapture. Or then they teach something that is completely off the wall, such as perverse lifestyles are okay, God doesn't mind. God doesn't care about that. Well, God most assuredly does care about that. So, I guess instead of just keeping on talking about this, and, because it could go on and on and on with all that I've seen. I'm sure you've seen it too if you've been watching the YouTube or other channels. Instead of doing that, let's go to our Father's Word. Let's go to the real prophets. Let's go to the real source and oracle of our Father's truth. Be turning, if you will, to Deuteronomy chapter 18. Deuteronomy chapter 18. Again, the name of this lecture is Seeing Vanity, and I would subtitle it False Prophets. But we're going to begin in Deuteronomy chapter 18, and before we do this, before we go into the study of our Father's Word, let us go before our Father's throne, and let us pray together for guidance and wisdom and understanding of these, our Father's most holy Scriptures. So let us pray, and let us pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, O heavenly Father. Thy kingdom come, and thy will be done, on this earth as it is in heaven, Father. We ask you this day, Father, for our daily bread. We ask you to open eyes and ears and hearts and minds, Father, to receive this truth. We ask you, Father, to reveal and to show us the hidden things contained within this, your most holy word. We ask that this study be pleasing to you, Father, and that you give this mouth the Spirit to speak with in things that are only pleasing to you. And we do this in all humility, Father. We ask for correction and we ask for guidance. And we ask that you shine a light upon this, Father, that we may be able to see. And we ask this, Father, in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. And amen. Now, again, we're going to be talking about false prophets here because that's what's going on in the world right now. Tons and tons of false prophets. Now that we've had our prayer, let us go to Deuteronomy chapter 18. We're going to be beginning in verse 9. So Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 9. And it reads, When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. Naturally, we're talking about the land of Canaan, land of Palestine, that is to say. And God was telling his children, the Israelites, when you come into this land, you will not do after the ways of those that inhabit the land. In other words, they worshiped false gods, they sacrificed their children, they practiced perverse lifestyles, they intermixed and intermarried, and God was not happy with it. So God told his children, when you come into the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, in other words, which I, God, gave you, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those lands. An abomination is anything that is filthy. It's anything that goes against our Father or against his word or against his law, quite frankly. In other words, God giving a stern warning. Don't do what they do. Verse 10. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. Okay, this is, of course, the practice of Molech. This is where they would sacrifice their children and put them to the fire. They would burn their children as an offering to God. That's making your children to pass through the fire. There's a whole other thing I could touch on about this, about the teaching of hellfire that scares people into churches, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I have a study called What is Hell? You can listen to if you want to hear that, and I've said it many times in many studies. But there shall not be found among you any that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. In other words, there's not going to be any found among you. God is forbidding this, that uses divination. In other words, that divines things. It means that they claim that they are an oracle, a prophet, or that they claim that they've got a word from some God or from God. Or an observer of times. In other words, an observer of times has to do with times and dates. And again, we've got many people out there setting times. We've got many people saying, look for this on this such and such date. And when you see this, you're going to know this. Or an enchanter. An enchanter is one that enchants people into following them with rousing words. Or a witch. You remember the witch of Endor, who was a spirit charmer. Speaking of that, verse 11. Or a charmer. This is to say, like one who charms a snake as a hissing. In other words, someone may be very charismatic, and as a person that sits there and blows their little flute and brings a cobra up out of a basket, they charm people to follow them. In other words, what they say sounds like musical notes to the ears. And I don't mean literal musical notes. I'm using that as a metaphor. In other words, people agree with them. They charm them. They use charisma to sound and say, you know, I'm a great Christian and I'm a prophet and you need to listen to me. To continue the verse. Or a consulter with familiar spirits. This would be demonic forces. Familiar spirits. Someone that is familiar to you. Again, you can think of the witch of Endor. Or a wizard, or a necromancer. A necromancer is one that talks to the dead. Basically the same thing as a spirit charmer, except a spirit charmer would be someone that will channel any spirit. In other words, God's saying, don't be any of these things. Verse 12. For all, now how many? All that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. In other words, they're filthy to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. In other words, this is what the people of the land were doing, and God was driving them out from before the children of Israel. Not only that, they were inbreeding with fallen angels, you know. They were bringing forth giants. How do we know this? Because it happened after the flood. That didn't happen just before the flood in Genesis chapter 6. There were giants in the lands and the sons of the Anakims. So people were doing the same thing. And God did drive them out from before the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel started partaking in it, God drove them out of the promised land. Their own iniquity separated between them and God. Verse 13. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Now, does this mean you're going to be a perfect human being? No, it doesn't. It means you will do what God says, and you will be perfect in God. You know, none of us are perfect. We're all sinners, but in Christ and through Christ's blood, we can be shed. That's kind of what this is alluding to. I do teach from the prophetical, but even before that time, even before Christ came, people could be perfect with the Lord. Again, that doesn't mean they weren't going to sin, doesn't mean they were going to be perfect, but it means that God could excuse their iniquity and that they could be perfect with the Lord. Perfect, probably not a great translation here. It would probably be better stated as thou shalt be as good as you can be with the Lord your God. Because God knows we all fall short of the glory of God. Verse 14. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times, and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord God hath not suffered thee to do so. In other words, God has set you on a higher path than to fall off to the ways of the Gentiles. Gentiles, of course, at that time were people that may have even been of Adamic stock and cousins, but they were not of the tribes of Israel. And today it is more referring to the unlearned. Those who separate themselves from God and follow anything but God. People that hold their little seances, or people that get up and divine. I have a vision, you know. People that say, I am having dreams. God is showing me things in dreams. I am divining unto you that God has spoken to me. I've heard people say, I was in prayer for 3 or 4 hours this morning. You know, well, that's all well and good. I have nothing against prayer. I wish I had that kind of time to pray. And probably even if I did have that kind of time to pray, maybe I wouldn't even do it. It's not that I don't like to pray. It's just that being in the flesh, you're constantly driven by forces. You're constantly being pulled down by the flesh, by work, by troubles in your life, and other things, and you really don't have time to sit around and pray for 3 or 4 hours. Usually when I pray, I will pray a short prayer, asking a blessing upon the day, asking that God guide me in what I'm supposed to do, and trying to plan out my day as best I can. And if I'm studying, of course, I ask God's guidance over that. And of course, when we do these Bible studies, I pray. And when I pray at other times, I will ask for repentance. In other words, again, none of us are perfect. So we need to repent often. But I'm hearing these people say, who, again, are self-proclaimed prophets, I was up most of the night in prayer. I sat there for 3 or 4 hours meditating on verses and praying. And God spoke to me and said this. And God is assuring me of this. And God has laid it on my heart to say this. Okay? Now, if God lays something on your heart, that's one thing. But when you start speaking and saying that God is speaking to you, and when you start prophesying, and then those prophecies fail, you're making Christians out to look stupid and moronic. And not only that, you're mocking the Lord your God. And if you think God is going to bless you for that, I would say you've got a rude awakening coming. Verse 15. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me, and unto him ye shall hearken. Okay? Now, who are we talking about here? Who is this prophet that God would raise up? Well, naturally, it was Christ. But was Christ only a prophet? No, he's the Son of God. Which means that he is God incarnate. Emmanuel, God with us. God walking with man. In other words, God raised up Moses, and God would raise up another afterward. And he would be a prophet after God's own heart. He would speak only the truth, and he would be sacrificed. But he would raise up from their brethren, in other words, from the tribe of Judah and from the tribe of Levi, the priest line and the king line, praised and joined together. And Moses says, like unto me. Okay, what does that mean? A deliverer. A deliverer. And what else was Moses? A lawgiver. Now, did Christ give laws? No, but he said to uphold the law. And so we can see that there was one deliverer who brought the children out of Egypt, and there is another deliverer that's going to take us into the promised land. And we also have a type in that in Moses, we had that deliverer with the power of God who brought the children across the Red Sea and brought them up to the Holy Land, was not allowed to enter himself, but the one that took over from him who was named Yahushua, or the same thing as Yeshua. In other words, God's Savior. And in that, I've pointed to that type many times. God gives us types and examples that we can look at and follow. But what is it saying here? The Lord thy God will raise up to thee a prophet from the midst of thee. In other words, from you. From you how? From the seed line of David, from the stem of Jesse. And he would be also in the flesh. He would be of thy brethren. In other words, he would be an Israelite. And like unto me. In other words, one who speaks to God, one who delivers his people. And Moses was not sacrificed. However, Christ was. And Moses is saying, unto him you shall hearken. Now, did Moses have any idea that it was going to be long after him or long after these people were dead and gone that prophet would come along? Probably not. But he knew one would come. Because our Father had given Moses the Word of God in the first place. That is to say, the first 5 books of this Bible. And if something is divinely inspired, it will come to pass. Now again, Moses was a prophet who was speaking of things long in the future. And most of the prophets are speaking of things long in the future. Though they spoke of things in their own time. But their prophecies did not fail. Whereas many people today's prophecies who claim that they have divine divination from the Lord are failing. And if they're teaching contrary to the Word of God in something that doesn't mesh up to our Father's Word, then it's going to fail. Verse 16. According to all that thou desirest of the Lord thy God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, Let me hear not again the voice of the Lord my God, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. Verse 17. And the Lord said unto me, They have well spoken, that which they have spoken. In other words, they didn't want to see God. They didn't want to see that fire anymore. They didn't want to hear the voice of God anymore. Why? Because the voice of God, as you can probably imagine, if you were to hear it audibly, is probably quite a terrifying thing. And people at this time believed that if they saw God, that they would die. Now, it's kind of hard to understand these people's perspective at times, because naturally when we die, we're all going to go back to be with the Father anyway. And to leave this flesh is not such a loss in my mind. So, when you really think about this, these people are thinking with the flesh. And they're putting the flesh kind of above God. Because, let me assure you, if God said, if you see me and I speak to you, that you're going to die and be with me, then I would be more than happy for God to speak to me. In other words, I would be happy to be at home with the Father. But these people, terrified of God. And, well so, He is the creator of souls. He is the creator of this heaven and the earth. And He can destroy the soul. But our Father loves us. And He created us for His pleasure. So these people say, let us not see this great fire anymore, and let us not hear the voice of the Lord anymore, that they die not. And the Lord said, they have well spoken that they would have spoken. Verse 18, I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren. In other words, instead of speaking to them like this, I will raise them up a prophet from their own brethren, like unto thee. And I will put my words in his mouth. In other words, Christ did speak by the Spirit. And he shall speak to them all that I command him. And of course, we are talking about Christ here. You could say that we were talking about other prophets as well, but moreover, we're talking about one particular prophet. We're talking about Christ. Verse 19, and it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. This is why it is Christ said, no man cometh to the Father but by me. Okay, you've got to go through Christ. You can't do an end run around God. Now, in saying that, I realize that there are many good people in the world that are charitable, that care about their brothers and sisters, that feed the hungry, that do many good works. And we have a fair God, okay? We have a fair God. And again, no doubt that's what the millennium is all about, is those that did not have a chance to know Christ, because many of these people are in other parts of the world. Never heard of Christ. They're Hindu. They're, well, one of many religions, okay? It's not just one. And others have been in this earth age, and because they were probably browbeaten as young children to go to church and taught a bunch of lies or taught a bunch of things that did match up, have become atheistic minded. But they're still good people. Do you think God is going to forsake them totally and completely and just say, you don't have a chance? I, for one, do not. I think that is what the purpose of the millennium is for, is to reach those who were duped in this earth age. Not all. There are some here that by their own willingness are ignorant. In other words, they would rather have nothing to do with God, not because they were browbeaten to be so, but probably because of what they were in the first earth age. You've got other people that have been raised in a Christian-free nation and absolutely despise our Father. So it's up to God to judge them. I'm not going to judge them, but there are many reasons why the millennium is in place, the day of the Lord. It will be a time of teaching by Christ and his apostles and his elect. Verse 20. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. Now, are these people that are claiming to speak in the name of the Lord dying? Well, no, not really. But they will eventually die. And if one was found to be a false prophet, then naturally they would have probably been stoned to death. God dislikes false prophets. If you're ever going to speak a thing and you're not really sure about it, then you need to say, this is my supposition. This is what I think is going to happen. Don't presume to speak in the name of the Lord. I don't presume to speak in the name of the Lord. I don't call myself a prophet. To be honest with you, I consider myself to be a fellow student and a seed planter. A seed planter is someone who plants the seed, and if it grows from then, fine. But as it grows, it may take on its own characteristics. In other words, I learned from great teachers, and as I've grown in our Father's Word, I've come to disagree with them on some points, very minor points usually. That doesn't mean I don't respect them. That doesn't mean I don't honor them and love them as brothers the same. I've got people that I have taught with that have nothing to do with me now. I've got people that I don't get to talk to as often as I would like, that I have been in close contact with. And that's just the way things are. But none of them claim to be prophets. I don't claim to be a prophet. I don't say, the Lord told me to tell you this. I don't set timelines and dates. Why? Because Christ told us not to. Christ said, of that day and of that hour knoweth no man. Okay? Well, when you see the things coming to pass that Christ told us, then you will begin to know when the time is. We know the season. We know it's going to happen in this generation of the fig tree. We know that we're in the fifth trump now. That is to say, most likely in the fifth trump. I do believe we are in the fifth trump wholeheartedly. And I think that's borne out in that the fifth trump is a time of learning. And I think at the end of this fifth trump, we're going to see Satan cast out, probably in the not too distant future. But again, I'm hearing people setting dates of this and that and the other. 2030, 2025, 20 whatever. And I've heard people saying there's a perfect 7,000 years here and a perfect 6,000 years of this before the millennium. And I've listened to these things, and it occurs to me that they have totally forgotten that Christ said that the times were shortened. In other words, we've got a 7-year period originally prophesied that was shortened down. I still think the 3.5-year world government buildup it will happen or either is happening. I mean, I'm even unsure as to where we are during that point. But I do know this. We're told in Revelation chapter 9 that when Satan comes, he's got 5 months to hurt men. 5 months to deceive. Some people will even break that down. And whatever about that, if it's shorter, I'll be delighted. But I'm preparing for 5 months of Satan's tribulation. But let's reread verse 20 here again. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, that is to say, speaks in the name of God, says that God told him, says that he's speaking for God, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods. Okay? Satan could be considered one of these false gods. You see lowercase g there. Or that claims to speak in the name of Baal, or, people worship Satan as a dark being, and not as Antichrist right now. Or people worship a number of things. Even that prophet shall die. In other words, God's not going to tolerate that. God does not like a prophet. And what this is moreover saying is that prophet is going to go from being an immortal soul to a mortal soul. That is to say, they're going to be a liable to die soul. Will they get to go through the millennium? Well, that's up to our Father. It's not up to me. Verse 21. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? In other words, when we hear these prophets speaking, how shall we know whether they're worth their salt or not? How are we going to know whether they're prophesying truthfully or falsely? Verse 22. Here's God going to tell you. When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. But the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. In other words, you shall not fear his words, and you shall not give reverence unto his words. In other words, let's be clear. When a prophet speaks a thing in the name of the Lord told me this. The Lord spoke to me this morning and said this. The Lord came to me this morning and said this. The Lord came to me this morning and said this. I had a dream and the Lord told me this. Okay? You've heard all these voices saying these things. When a prophet speaketh a thing in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not nor come to pass, This is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. Okay? So again, people were saying that Donald Trump was going to be elected on the 20th of January. Excuse me. He was going to be sworn in on the 20th of January. Okay? Did that come to pass? The obvious answer is no, it did not come to pass. But now instead of backing off this, these people are saying, oh, well, there's going to be two presidents. What does God say, though, about someone who says something and it doesn't come to pass? Well, what did we just read? That is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. In other words, God didn't talk to them. God didn't tell them that. But the prophet that has spoken it, spoke it presumptuously. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. In other words, they presumed that that was going to happen. They made an assumption that that was going to happen. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. In other words, you don't want to pay attention to him. You don't need to be afraid of his words, because many people were prophesying bad things. Okay? You don't need to be afraid of him. So, let's go over now. We're going to go to Jeremiah chapter 5. Jeremiah chapter 5. Sorry if I'm not moving along fast enough. I've got a lot of thoughts running through my head about how I want to say these things, and sometimes that's why I do speak slowly like I do. Other times it's because I want to be concise, and I have to reason things out. You know, I don't sit here and read a script. You know, I sit here and, yes, I do have the Bible verses up where I can read them, but I don't sit here and read a script. So I try to measure things out carefully so that I don't speak amiss. In times past I have, and you know, those lectures are still up for you to hear. You will hear my folly. But there you go. Again, nobody's perfect. Jeremiah chapter 5. Run ye to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem, and see now, in other words, look now, and know, and seek in the broad places thereof, if ye can find a man. If there be any that executeth judgment, in other words, that executes righteous judgment, that is doing that which is right, that seeketh the truth, and I will pardon it. In other words, what did God tell Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah? He said, if I go there and I can find so many worthy men, I will let them live. I will not destroy Sodom. And Abraham said, well, what if there's less? God said, well, for a few less, I will pardon it. I will not destroy it. And Abraham said, but what if there's lesser than that? And God said, for lesser than that, I will not destroy it. And then it got down to, what if it's only a handful, Father? What if it's only a handful? God said, for a handful I will not. But there were not a handful. So God did destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's basically what's being said here concerning Jerusalem. And why Jerusalem? Jerusalem's the focal point. That's where we're going to see the Antichrist come. And we're looking here towards the Babylonian captivity as well. In other words, God told the children of Israel if they would abide by his law and do what he said and reverence him, that he would not forsake them nor kick them off the land. But you know Israel. They've got to be stiff-necked and, you know, hard-headed. But God said he would pardon it if he could find judgment there and truth and people that seek truth. Verse 2. And though they say the Lord liveth, surely they swear falsely. In other words, much like today, people say, I speak in the name of Jesus. Or I speak in the name of the Father. Or God lives. Okay, what this means when they say the Lord liveth is, we believe that there is a God. Surely they swear falsely. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in the deity of God. They don't believe in the omnipotence of God. You have to remember these people were raised in a land where there was a God on every street corner. Where people sold gods in the marketplace. Where people made their own gods out of wood stock and covered them over with metal. You know? But they claim to be faithful. And it's just like Christ said, many shall come in my name, saying I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Surely they swear falsely. I mean, When I say they swear falsely, they will tell you things are going to come to pass which are not going to come to pass. But do they believe in Christ? Yes, I think a lot of people do believe in Christ, and even these rapture doctrine believers believe in Christ. Only when the event happens and they're face to face with their Lord, what did Christ say he was going to say to them? Get out of my sight, I never knew you, you workers of iniquity. Verse 3. O Lord, are not thine eyes upon the truth? Thou hast stricken them, but they have not grieved. Thou hast consumed them, but they have not refused to refused to receive correction. They have made their faces harder than a rock. Lowercase on the word rock there, by the way. They have refused to return. In other words, the more God put the screws to them, the more God corrected them, the more they rebelled. Remember what happened to Pharaoh? The more proof that God gave him that he was real in the plagues, with each consecutive plague, Pharaoh's heart was hardened even more. Same things happen in our world today, and people are claiming, no, there's going to be a great revival. There's going to be a time of peace. There's going to be a time of deliverance. God is going to be delivering his people during this time. When the Bible tells us that people are going to get more and more deceived, that the birth pangs are going to get closer and closer and closer. Again, if you ask me, these people are setting up for Satan's deception to come to pass. They are paving a road towards the Antichrist, and they don't even know it, most likely. They refuse to return. They won't receive correction. They have not grieved. In other words, again, these false prophets that are prophesying falsely are not repenting themselves. I mean, a few are. I shouldn't say that. I have seen 2 or 3 people that have now come forward and said, okay, this didn't come to pass the way that I thought it was, and I said that it was going to happen in the name of God, and they have repented. And very few of them. I don't know if that will continue to be the case with these very same people. I don't know if they'll start prophesying again something else later. I mean, usually there's a pattern to people, but maybe they will receive correction. But the children of Israel did not. They did not grieve when they were consumed. They refused to receive correction, and they made their faces harder than a rock. In other words, this is like saying they're hard-headed, okay? They've made their faces harder than a rock so that they won't listen. And they have refused to return. To return to who? To God. To return to the proper way. Verse 4. Therefore I said, surely these are poor. They are foolish. For they know not the way of the Lord, nor the judgment of their God. And that is true. They have no clue. Verse 5. I will get me unto the great men, and I will speak to them, for they have known the way of the Lord, and the judgment of their God. But these, in other words, the false prophets, have altogether broken the yoke and burst the bonds. In other words, we're talking about God's yoke here, which is easy to bear, and the bonds of God, which are not as bonds at all. It's simply metaphors used to say that you are God's property. Okay? That's what it comes down to. They burst away. They have pulled away from God. Verse 6. Wherefore a lion out of the forest shall slay them, and a wolf of the evening shall spoil them, and a leopard shall watch over their cities. Every one that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces, because their transgressions are many, and their backslidings are increased. Okay, again, these are metaphors. A lion shall come out to slay them. Okay? What is Christ supposed to represent to us? The Lion of the tribe of Judah. Okay, but what if a false lion comes? Say Satan, pretending to be Antichrist. He's going to slay them. And a wolf of the evening, okay? A wolf of the evening will eat anything. And the leopard, of course, the spotted animal, you know, that having to do with the Kenites, shall watch over their cities. In other words, not only are they going to watch over their cities, they're going to bear rule over the cities. Where's most of the trouble in our world at? In the cities. You know, that's where the leftists all are stationed. And I say stationed for a specific reason. Everyone that goeth out thence shall be torn in pieces, because their transgressions are many and their backslidings are increased. Do you think that pleases God? Do you think it pleases God to see his children suffer because of others? Because of communists, socialists, atheists, secret society, politicians, blah, blah, blah. You could go on and on. In other words, what God is saying here is they're going to be destroyed. Not literally by a lion, not literally by a wolf, not literally by a leopard, but they are going to be destroyed. That is to say, if they don't change their ways. Verse 7. How shall I pardon thee for this? Thy children have forsaken me, and sworn by them that are no gods. Again, lowercase g there. They have sworn by things which are not God. Now this would include Satan, that is to say Lucifer, Antichrist. It would include other gods of the world. It would include false gods, or it would include anything that you make a god before you. They have sworn by them that are no gods. In other words, they've sworn by false gods. When I, and this is God speaking this, okay, not me, this is our Father's word. When I had fed them to the full, they then committed adultery, and assembled themselves by troops in the harlots' houses. In other words, harlots' houses here kind of symbolic of churches. It is Mystery Babylon, the harlot, that will lead the great revival, the great awakening. Probably not as these people think that are prophesying today, but we do know that in the end times that people are going to assemble themselves by troops, and this just means large numbers as a marching army. They're going to assemble themselves and go into the harlots' houses, okay? Which means they're going to commit adultery. Who are they playing the harlot with? Well, with the Antichrist. Who were the old children of Israel that are being talked about here historically committing harlotry with? Well, the gods of the land. There were gods on every street corner. In Jerusalem, in God's own city, habitation of peace. They were on every street corner. And people were making them and bringing them in and selling them. In God's own city. The place that God chose. Verse 8. They were fed, they were as fed horses in the morning, and everyone neighed after his neighbor's wife. In other words, God fed them well early. Made them fat. A horse was something you had to feed because you need a horse. The same is true of oxen or sheep or anything. You've got to get up and feed them in the morning so they can have strength to do what they have to do. Whether it's an oxen pulling a cart or a horse running to take you into battle or whatever. God fed them. And what did they do? Everyone neighed after his neighbor's wife. In other words, they committed harlotry with his neighbor's wife. They coveted things that were not theirs. There's more of a symbology to this. Verse 9. Shall I not visit for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? Do you think God's happy with people that are playing the harlot? Teaching false doctrines, claiming of big wonderful things which are not going to happen? I mean, I really hate to say this, but I'm going to call bullshit. Yeah, I'm going to call bullshit on this great awakening. If it is some sort of great awakening, it's going to be a false awakening, because it's not what our Father's Word tells us. Our Father's Word tells us that the labor pangs are going to continue as a woman that travaileth with child. Do you know how much pain that is? Things are going to get worse, not better. There's going to be no time of peace. Not such as these people are talking about. They're setting people up for the return of the Antichrist. They're going to claim this great awakening and this great time of Christianity And then, you know what's probably going to, you know, I was discussing this with my my girlfriend last night. And she said to me, she said, what if Trump, and I'm just putting this out, I'm not saying this is going to happen, this is not a prophetical word, this is just a discussion that I had with my girlfriend. It's nothing for you to take seriously, it's only just something to think about, okay? That's it. She said, what if Trump comes in and causes the deadly wound to this one world government? Because everyone thinks he's such a patriot and this, that, and the other. What if he is the one that divides the country? I mean, it is one head wounded unto death and causes them to pull out of this global government. Because look at Trump's track record of, look at China, okay? With the Chinese, he cut off the trade with them, which I don't say was a bad thing. And he pulled out of the accords in France having to do with global warming and carbon emissions. And it sort of makes sense to think about it in that way. I have no doubt that Trump is going to be back somehow. And that's not a word from the Lord. That's just in observing what I'm saying. Could it happen that some kind of legal challenge is mounted because of some new proof that comes out? I suppose. Could it be that Trump is reelected in 2024? I suppose. I don't really know how it's going to come to pass. Don't really know if it's going to come to pass. It's just supposition. But it seems to make sense. But I'm not presuming to be a prophet in saying that. I'm just putting forth the idea that what if that's what it was? You know, I mean, Trump is starting his own new party now, I hear, called the Patriot Party, whose symbol is the lion, which I find interesting because of the prophecy of Daniel, where it has the head of a lion. And, you know, I would take that to mean something else, but it could also have a prophetical connotation to that. Anyway, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, so don't quote me and don't say, oh, did you hear what Bruce said? He said this, this, and this. I'm simply putting forth an idea of how something could come to pass. Because I don't see things getting better. I see them getting worse. I see more and more stringent rules being put on us, more freedoms taken away, and I do not see this time of so-called the Great Awakening coming. And the people that are preaching it, I feel, are leading people towards something that is not real, such as Slewfoot coming down here. And, you know, whether this Great Awakening thing put on show happens or not, right now, if Satan came, the world's going to be deceived. Okay? Right now, if Satan is cast down to the earth, the world's going to be deceived. Right now, if Satan claims to be Christ and has the power of an archangel and has the hosts of heaven with him, his locust army, the world's going to be deceived. But how much more would they be deceived if they think that there's some kind of great awakening going in? That's what brings our Lord and Savior back. They think that there's a great awakening and it's time for the rapture. You see how this all works together? So again, this is just supposition. Okay? Supposition. It's not anything that I am reading in our Father's Word. It's just supposition for how the deception might work. But, again, I am no prophet. I am merely a teacher and a seed planter. So, let's go back to verse 9 and reread that right quick, and then we'll go on to verse 10. Shall I not visit for these things? In other words, shall not God bring down his wrath upon the people for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? You know, he's talking about his own here. He's talking about the children of Israel, and he's talking about the Kenites that are among them. Which nation do you think he's angrier with? Which has shed more innocent blood? Think about it. Verse 10. Go ye up on her walls, and destroy, but make not a full end. Take away her battlements, for they are not the Lord's. In other words, that wall around that city is not God's. He didn't tell them to do that. Go ye up on her walls and destroy. Tear down those walls. But make not a full end. In other words, do not destroy the place. Why? Because that's God's place. Take away her battlements, for they are not the Lord's. In other words, their weapons of war are not God's weapons of war. God's weapon of war is the truth. The two-edged tongue of Christ. Verse 11. For the house of Israel and the house of Judah have dealt very treacherously against me, saith the Lord. Verse 12. For they have belied the Lord, and said, It is not he, neither shall evil come upon us, neither shall we see sword or famine. In other words, they didn't believe God's prophecies. They didn't believe what God had told them. Not some person, what God had told them. God told them, if you don't live a certain way, you're going to suffer. And they're saying, we're not going to see sword. We're not going to see any bad thing happen. And we're not going to see famine. There's plenty around here. Just look at the bounty around us. We're not going to see famine. I want you to think about what the famine is for the end times, and I want you to think about the sword as it's been used. We're not going to see the sword coming after us, and we're not going to see famine. Is that what God's Word says? Amos chapter 8, verse 13. And the prophets shall become wind, for the word is not in them. Thus shall it be done unto them. In other words, the prophets shall become wind. What does that mean? They're going to be blowhards. They're going to be prophesying out of their own minds and mouths. But it's not from God. The word is not in them. The word from God is not in them. And thus shall it be done unto them. In other words, their own words are going to be a snare for them. Verse 14. Wherefore thus speaketh the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, behold, I will make all my words in thy mouth fire, and this people wood, and it shall devour them. In other words, God is going to take his vengeance upon them. God is a consuming fire. That's why we have chaff and wheat. You know, chaff is the little lightweight stuff that is thrown off and burned. And believe me, you light up the chaff and it goes boom, and it's gone. The wheat is taken into the storehouse. Same thing with the tares. You know, the tares burn up real easy. Verse 15. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation. A nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. Okay? There's two connotations to this verse. Lo, look, I will bring a nation upon you from afar, O house of Israel. Okay? Saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation. Okay? Babylon was an ancient nation, and that's the historical. The prophetical is the king of Babylon of the end times. Satan is ancient in a supernatural body. And those that come with him, his nation, his locust army, are coming after Israel. A nation whose language thou knowest not. Okay, we're talking about Babylon here. Babel. Okay, to Babel. So that you can't understand what they say. Of course, when the Chaldeans came in, the people did not know how to speak Chaldean. So you've got that historically. But what about these that are coming speaking with the ancient angelic tongue? Possibly even the earliest form of whatever language, the Hebrew, that won't even be able to be understood by the modern Israelites in their block Hebrew. Not going to understand what they say. Verse 16. Their quiver is an open sepulchre. They are all mighty men. Verse 17. They shall eat up thine harvest. What do locusts do again? And thy bread. Guess what bread we're talking about here? The bread of life. Which thy sons and thy daughters should eat. They shall eat up thy flocks and thine herds. There's going to be famine. They shall eat up thy vines and thy fig trees. Clue, clue, clue. They shall impoverish thy fenced cities, wherein thou trusted. In other words, you trusted in your walls. Not the wall that, or the hedge that God put around you. You trusted in your walls. And they're going to impoverish the fenced cities wherein thou trustedest with the sword. Only it's not going to be the sword of the Lord. It's not going to be Revelation 1:16. It's going to be another sword. You could even say it will be word. Verse 18. Nevertheless, in those days, saith the Lord, I will not make a full end with you. In other words, God loving Israel, loving his children, going to destroy some generation off like he did in the desert when the children didn't want to enter the promised land in the first place. God not making a full end to the children of Israel. There would always be a remnant. Verse 19. And it shall come to pass, when ye say, Wherefore doth the Lord our God doeth all these things unto us? Then thou shalt answer them, Like as ye have forsaken me, and served strange gods, lowercase g, in your land, so shall you serve strangers in the land that is not yours. In other words, you're going into captivity. You're going into captivity of the king of Babylon. And today, people are going into the captivity of the king of Babylon of the end times. Verse 20. Declare this in the house of Jacob, and publish it in Judah, saying, verse 21, Hear now, O foolish people, hear now this, O foolish people, and without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. Verse 22, Fear ye not me, saith the Lord? Will ye not tremble at my presence, which have placed the sand for a bound by the sea, or of the sea, by a perpetual decree, that it cannot pass? And through the waves thereof, though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet they cannot prevail. Though they roar, yet they cannot pass over it. Now, we're talking about the natural sea here. Will the sea pass the shoreline in a tsunami? Yes, but what causes a tsunami? An earth-shaking event. And we're told about a lot of earth-shaking events in these end times. Why do I bring up the tsunami? Because it comes in as a flood. And it's an earth-shaking event. When Satan comes in, he comes in as a flood. The other point is, yes, water can pass the decree line where God told it not to pass, but it only happens by an act of nature. And who controls nature? God. Verse 23. But this people hath a revolting and a rebellious heart. They are revolted and gone. In other words, gone away from me. That's what God's saying. This people, they have a revolting heart and a rebellious heart. Verse 24. Neither say they in their heart, Let us now fear the Lord our God, that giveth rain, both the former and the latter, in his season. He reserveth unto us the appointed weeks of the harvest. In other words, they didn't say that. Isn't it interesting how every time I go to do something, there's either 12,000 sirens, or 10 trains, or 50 garbage trucks going by? In case you hear that in the background. Clangety clang. Oh! Hear the brakes squeaking. You know. Happens almost every time. I guess I must always do this on a certain day, but it seems like every time I do something, something interrupts me. At any point, before I get off on that, let us hear what the real reason is that God has turned his back on his people. Verse 25. Your iniquities have turned away these things, and your sins have withholden good things from you. Now, when you prophesy a thing that you know that God didn't actually speak to you, that you only think God gave you a message for, and it doesn't come to pass, then guess what? That makes you look like a fool. And not only that, it angers God. Your iniquities have turned away these things. Now, there were many more iniquities than just false teachers and people who prophesied in the name of God, and it didn't come to pass. I could go back to Jeremiah, who was told to take the yoke and wear it around. And of course the people who claimed to speak for God said, "We shall not certainly go into captivity, and within 2 full years God shall return the things taken away by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and the people." Only did that happen? No. They went into captivity for a period of 70 years, just as God had determined upon them. And what happened to those false teachers? Well, they died in obscurity in Babylon. In other words, they went into Babylon and they never came back out. So there's a type in that for you to see. How many times are we told in our Father's Word, "Come out of her, my people. Come out of Babylon." Babylon, of course, being confusion. "Come out of confusion, my people." Yet these false prophets went into confusion and never came back out. They went into the actual geographical land of Babylon and never came back out. Verse 25, "Your iniquities have turned away these things, and your sins have withholden good things from you." Verse 26, "For among my people are found wicked men that lay wait, and he that setteth snares, they set a trap, they catch men." In other words, we are told to be fishers of men, but these people are laying a trap. They're lying in wait. Do you have any idea who these people could possibly be? The Nethinim, the sons of Cain. They've got a bunch of names. The sons of Rechab. We're talking about the self-same group of people that is in control of the world now, that has all the money of the world and can finance and do the things that are done in the world. When you hear that the United States is so many trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, ask yourself, who are we in debt to? Who are we, the most powerful and free nation on the earth, in debt to? Are we in debt to the other nations of the world? Somewhat. But who are we really in debt to? Who controls all the banks of the world? Who controls all the monetary systems of the world? Ta-da! That's who. Verse 27. They catch men, with their snares. Verse 27. "As a cage full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. Therefore, they are become great and waxen rich." Oh yeah, they pack them in. They pack them in to hear their false prophecies and to hear, "Just give this such and such amount and the Lord's going to bless you greatly." They pack them into their churches. But what are they? They're evil men. Verse 28. "They are waxen fat. They shine, yea, they overpass the deeds of the wicked. They judge not the cause," that is to say, they judge not fairly the cause of the fatherless, yet they prosper. In other words, they don't do that which is right. They don't judge fairly the cause of the fatherless. The fatherless needs to have one as judge. Haven't you ever wondered why the households are being destroyed in our time? Many of them are fatherless. In other words, they don't have a male figure in there. Does that mean a mother can't do a good job raising their kids? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But they're a family unit and supposed to be by God's natural ordained order for a reason. But these do not judge the cause of the fatherless, yet they prosper. In other words, the wicked prosper. We covered this in the last lecture. "And the right of the needy they do not judge." In other words, they don't care about the needy. All they can do is use the needy as a voting demographic in the modern time. Bring people into this country, tell them to vote, sign them up, whether they're legal or not. Was this election stolen? Most likely. Does it make any difference who's president? Not really. We're still going into Babylon. We're still going into one world government, no matter who's in the office. Why? Because that's what God's Word says. So, since God appoints men to power, such as the king of Babylon, such as Pharaoh, such as the king of Assyria, such as Caesar even, then it's my guess that whoever's in power is in power for a reason. Verse 29. Shall I not visit for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? You know, we've already had that said once, and now it's said again. Verse 30. A wonderful and horrible thing is committed in the land. Let's hear what that is. Verse 31. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests bear rule by their means. No, not by God's means, but by their means. And my people love to have it so. And what will you do in the end thereof? Well, the long and short answer is you're going to be deceived. You're going to be deceived, and you're going to fall and worship the Antichrist. And they can call it the Great Awakening. They can call it some new age. They can call it whatever they want to. They can say it's going to be a time of revival. They can say whatever they want, but it's still going to be the same old deception. Let us go now to the book of Ezekiel in chapter 13. I know you all know where I'm going with this. This is one of my favorite chapters. It's one that I quote and read a lot. But this time we're going to cover it. Not going to spend a great deal of time on it, but we're going to go through it because it concerns the very subject that we're talking about today. So, Ezekiel chapter 13 and verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, verse 2, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel that prophesy. And say thou unto them that prophesy out of their own hearts, Hear ye the word of the Lord. Verse 3. Thus saith the Lord God, Warning, woe, unto the foolish prophets that follow their own spirit and have seen nothing. In other words, God did not give them a vision. God did not guide them. God did not tell them to speak to you. Yet they are proclaiming themselves prophets. Verse 4. O Israel, thy prophets are like foxes in the desert. In other words, they will eat anything up. And if there's a bunch of them that get together and are in agreement with each other, they'll all sit and nod their heads yes and say, Yea, brother, and eat up anything, no matter if it's total bullcrap or not. In other words, they will eat any doctrine or claim anything, and largely probably to make themselves look like more holy prophets than they ever were or are. Verse 5. Ye have not gone up into the gaps, neither have ye made up the hedge for the house of Israel to stand in the battle of the day of the Lord. There's only one day of the Lord. That's the day Christ returns. They can't stand in it. Why? Why can't they stand in the day of battle, in the day of the Lord? Because they have not gone up into the gaps. In other words, they've not filled the breaches in the walls. Neither made up a hedge, which is to say a wall for the house of Israel to stand. They've put their own walls up, their own little untempered mortar daubed walls. Verse 6. They have seen vanity, which is to say emptiness, and lying divination, saying, The Lord saith, and the Lord hath not sent them. And they have made others to hope that they would confirm the word. Yes, they all sit around in their groups and say, Yea, brother, that's the way it is. You have confirmed what I myself saw. You have confirmed what God said to me. And not only that, the churches they go into, the people want the word confirmed for them. So the people believe whatever they tell them. So when they say there's going to be a rapture, the word is confirmed to them that there's going to be a rapture, when there's not going to be a rapture. They're going to be led right to the feet of the Antichrist when he comes here. Verse 7. Have you not seen a vain vision? And have you not spoken a lying divination, whereas you say, The Lord saith, albeit I have not spoken? In other words, God didn't speak to them. Verse 8. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Because ye have spoken vanity, and seen lies, therefore, behold, I am against you, saith the Lord God. Now, what do you think of yourselves now, false prophets? God has said he's against you. He's not for you. You're not speaking on his behalf. He is against you. Verse 9. And mine hand shall be upon the prophets that see vanity. That doesn't mean his hand's going to be on their shoulder. It means his fist is going to come down on them. His power. And that divine lies. They shall not be in the assembly of my people, neither shall they be written in the writing of the house of Israel. In other words, they're going to be blotted out. Neither shall they enter into the land of Israel, the promised land. And ye shall know that I am the Lord God. Promised land, symbolic of heaven. Whether it's there or here upon the earth. Verse 10. Because ye have seduced my people, saying peace. In other words, peace. There's going to be a time of revival. There's going to be a new awakening. And there was no peace. And one built up a doll, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. They all threw their support behind it. Oh, yea, brother. One put up a false doctrine and a false vision, and others went and padded it with untempered mortar. Untempered mortar being false doctrine. Verse 11. Say unto them which daub it with untempered mortar, which is to say, again, false doctrine, that it shall fall. There shall be an overflowing shower. And ye, O great hailstones, shall fall, and a stormy wind shall rend it. Verse 12. Lo, when the wall is fallen, shall it not be said unto you, where is the daubing wherewith you daubed it? In other words, where's your false doctrine now? Where are your visions from God now? In other words, when your false prophecies fall flat on their face, what are you going to do then? Well, they're going to ratchet down and say, we have to wait, it's just not yet. Verse 13. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will even rend it with a stormy wind in my fury. That's red hot anger, friend. And there shall be an overflowing shower in mine anger, and great hailstones in my fury to consume it. Verse 14. So I will break down the wall that ye have daubed with untempered mortar, and bring it down to the ground, so that the foundation thereof shall be discovered. And the foundation of that wall is going to be that it was absolute bullshit. And it shall fall, and shall be consumed in the midst thereof. And ye shall know that I am the Lord. Verse 15. Thus will I accomplish my wrath upon the wall, and upon them that have daubed it with untempered mortar, and will say unto you, the wall is no more, neither they that daubed it. Verse 16. Verse 16. To wit, the prophets of Israel, which prophesy concerning Jerusalem, and which see visions of peace for her, and there is no peace, saith the Lord God. In other words, the same goes for those prophets that prophesy concerning visions of peace for Israel. In other words, when the Antichrist comes, people are going to say, it's a time of peace. It's a time of prosperity. No doubt they'll be claiming this is part of the Great Awakening and the Great Revival. They see visions for her, and there's not going to be any peace. There's not going to be any true peace until the true Christ returns, and not before. There is no peace, saith the Lord God. Now, God said that. That's what's written in God's Word. Though they claim there's going to be peace, there's not going to be peace. Just like the people teaching the rapture. You know, the church is going to be taken away. You're not going to have to suffer any of this. Really? Well, then who is going to stand against the Antichrist? Who is God addressing when he says it's going to fall to you for a testimony? Who is God going to prophesy through? The unfaithful? The unfaithful who are not worthy to go and be the bride of Christ? Are they going to stand up to Satan? I seriously doubt it. Verse 17. Likewise thou, son of man, set thy face against the daughters of thy people, which prophesy out of their own hearts, and prophesy thou against them. Verse 18. And say, thus saith the Lord God, woe to the women that sew pillows to all armholes, and make kerchiefs on the head of every stature, to hunt the souls. or to hunt souls. Will ye hunt the souls of my people? And will ye save the souls alive that come unto you with your false doctrines? The answer is no. So they're given a warning. Woe to the women that sew pillows to all armholes. In other words, they cover God's outstretched arms and make kerchiefs upon the head of every stature. They're covering God completely with false doctrines. A kerchief is something that is used, and there's many applications for this, but there's one that I like to use. When you go to blow your nose, you put a handkerchief up to your nose so that everyone doesn't see a bunch of crap pouring out of your face, okay? It conceals it, and then you shove it into your pocket, okay? But the connotation is here, they're covering God's truth with lies. They're prophesying things out of their own hearts that are not true. Are they able to save the souls alive that are going to come to them? Absolutely not. Verse 19. And will ye pollute me among my people for handfuls of barley and pieces of bread, to slay the souls that should not die, and to save the souls alive that should not live, by your lying to my people, which hear, which is to say, listen to your lies, which believe your lies? Will you pollute me among my people for gain, for handfuls of barley and for pieces of bread, and slay the souls that should not die? Why? By teaching them false doctrines which make void the word of God. And to save the souls alive, that is to say, promise salvation to people that should not live, by telling them that their perverse lifestyles are okay, by telling people that they don't have to believe God, by misleading them. Because people are more than willing to listen to lies. Verse 20. Wherefore thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against your pillows. I'm against your false doctrines, your coverings, wherewith ye hunt the souls, to make them fly, to make them take flight, to make them flee, to make them fly up into the sky, to meet the Lord in the air. And I will tear them from your arms, and let the souls go, even the souls that you hunt to make them fly. God's going to free them from it. You know how? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That man of sin, the son of perdition, is going to be revealed at the return of Christ. And then shall people meet the Lord in the air, the breath of life body, and in the clouds, the large groupings. Verse 21. Your kerchiefs also will I tear, and deliver my people out of your hand, and they shall be no more in your hand to be hunted. And ye shall know that I am the Lord. In other words, at that time when Christ comes, there's not going to be any more false doctrine after that. Save when Satan's released from the pit for a short time, and those that follow him then go into perdition's flames. Basically, they go to hell. Verse 22. Because with lies you have made the heart of the righteous sad. And it is a sad thing when you hear false prophets prophesying and labeling themselves as prophets. Whom I have not made sad. In other words, God gave us the truth. God gave us His word and His promises. He didn't make us sad. And strengthen the hands of the wicked. In other words, you have strengthened the hand of the wicked one. You have strengthened Satan, and you've strengthened his children. And you have convinced people that they should not repent of their sins. That he should not return from his wicked way by promising him life. Well, go ahead and tell people. Go ahead and tell people, hey, it's okay to live any way you want to. Live after the flesh. Live like a pedophile. Live like a homosexual or a lesbian. You know? Live transgender. It's okay. It doesn't matter. It's only God's word. Who cares, right? Verse 23. Therefore, ye shall see no more vanity. In other words, not going to be any more of your emptiness. Nor divinations. You're not going to divine to my people anymore. For I will deliver my people out of your hand, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. And of course, there's going to be wailing and gnashing of teeth, and people are going to pray for the mountains to fall on them, to hide them from the wrath of the Lamb. Let us turn over now. We're going to read from Matthew chapter 16. We're going to hear the words of Christ. Matthew chapter 16 and verse 1. The Pharisees also, with the Sadducees, came, and tempting him, who's the him they're tempting? Christ, that he would show them a sign from heaven. They wanted to see a sign from heaven. Always looking for a sign. Observers of times, date setters, and people looking for signs. Verse 2. And he answered and said unto them, when it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. Verse 3. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O you hypocrites! You can discern the face of the sky. In other words, you can tell when it's going to rain or when it's going to storm or when it's going to be fair. But ye cannot discern the signs of the times? In other words, they had Christ standing right before them, and they could not discern it. Verse 4. A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. Okay, that has particular relevance to all the signs that people say are being put forth now by these false teachers and these self-appointed prophets. And there shall be no sign given unto it but the sign of the prophet Jonas, which is to say Jonah. And he left them and departed. What was the sign of Jonah? Well, Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days, and people assumed that he was dead and gone. Yet he was vomited out on the shores of Nineveh, and because people there worshipped Dagon, the fish god, they listened to the words of Jonah. And Jonah spoke the truth to them. He is a type of Christ in that. Christ was in the tomb for 3 days, and he resurrected. And people saw him, and the dead arose with him, and people saw it. Yet, to this day, they still deny Christ. Even the people of that time denied what was right before their eyes. And their ilk and their doctrine has carried on to this day, so that the modern Jews of today still do not believe in Christ. That is to say, many Jews. Let us go now to Matthew chapter 7. Got to go back a few chapters. This is what Christ says. We're going to begin in verse 7. Ask, and it shall be given you. Okay, this is what we do every time we study our Father's Word. We ask for guidance and wisdom and understanding. Seek, and ye shall find. In other words, read your Father's Word, and you'll find the answers. Does that mean that everyone that reads our Father's Word is going to find the answer? Not necessarily. Perhaps they don't ask. But if they ask of an earnest heart, and they seek it diligently, they will find it. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. In other words, Christ stands at the door waiting. But you have to be of an earnest heart. You have to really seek it. You don't want to listen to a bunch of men, me or anyone else. You want to seek the answer for yourself. Study to show thyself approved. Verse 8. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Verse 9. Or what man is there of you, whom if his son asked bread, gave him a stone? You know, it's funny here that we've got bread used and stone. Christ is the bread of life, and Satan is the false rock. Okay, so that's kind of a connotation there you should be looking at. Who of you, if asked by your son, which we're all the sons of God, we're all the children of God, if you ask for bread, do you think God's going to give you a stone? In other words, if you ask for the truth, do you think God's going to give you a lie? Do you think God's going to give you some false vision that came out of your own head? Verse 10. You know how I know the bread and the stone connotation works here? Look at the next line, verse 10. Or if he ask a fish, will he give him a serpent? Okay? What was the original symbol for Christ? It was the fish. There's even a tetragrammaton in the Greek word of fish that says Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. And we all know who the serpent is. In other words, if you ask God for the truth of Christ, do you think God's going to give you the serpent? No. Men will give you the serpent. Men will give you false doctrines. But God won't. Verse 11. If ye then being evil, okay, this should probably be more over translated. If you being fleshly and worldly, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? Verse 12. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men would do unto you, do even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. In other words, this is what's written in the law and spoken by the prophets. If you want others to do good unto you, do good unto them. If you want others to do evil to you, do evil unto them. And if they do evil to you, do good to them. Then it's upon their head. Verse 13. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And many there shall be that go thereat. Or many there be that go thereat. In other words, you enter into the strait gate, okay? To enter into a gate, what do you have to do? You have to go up to a door and knock. That's the gate door. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And many there be which go thereat. In other words, go in through the correct door. The gate's wide. In other words, there's a whole lot of room to go into that gate. And broad is the way. The way's wide that leads to destruction. Why? Because there's so much false doctrine in the world. There's so many liars, so many false prophets, so many people that don't even believe in God. Verse 14. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Okay? What does that tell you about our world and the way that things are going to happen? Does that tell you there's going to be some great revival? I mean, it tells you broad is the way, and wide is the gate. And narrow is the way which leadeth unto life. That is to say, life eternal. And few there be that find it. In other words, most of the world is deceived already, and has been being deceived for a long time. Verse 15. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing. In other words, pretending to be Christians. Beware of false prophets. Prophets which utter their own words. Same as in Ezekiel 13. Which come to you in sheep's clothing. In other words, we are the lambs of God. But inwardly they are ravening wolves. In other words, they'll eat up anything. They'll eat up any doctrine. They're like wolves in the desert. Verse 16. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? You know, thorns and thistles and bramble, all symbolic of your Kenites, or all symbolic of things which are can draw blood, let me put it that way, and are quite frankly painful. You will know a prophet by their fruits. Okay? So if their fruits fall off the tree, if their prophecies fall flat on their face, then guess what? They aren't sent of God. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Grapes and figs, symbolic of good things which God gave us. But there are bad figs. And there are wild or rotten grapes. Verse 17. And I'm not saying that wild means rotten. I'm saying there's wild grapes and there's rotten grapes. Okay, so let me clarify that. Verse 17. Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. Okay? The tree of life, which is Christ, brings forth eternal life. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil brought sin into the world. False teachers and false prophets bring forth corrupt fruit, for they are corrupt trees. They bring forth evil fruit, which is not fit. It's false doctrine. Verse 18. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. Neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Okay? So a liar is not going to bring forth truth, and a person that speaks the truth is not going to lie. A false doctrine is not going to bring forth truth, and true doctrine is not going to bring forth lies. Verse 19. Every tree that bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Okay? Don't think that needs any more explanation. Verse 20. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Verse 21. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. In other words, he that does the will of my Father in heaven shall enter in. Verse 22. Many will say to me in that day, what day? The day of the Lord, the day that Christ returns. Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Verse 23. And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So, what is the crux of this? Those of you that are out there teaching false prophecies, teaching that that wonderful times are coming, that a time of peace is coming, that a new revival is coming, that there's going to be a golden dawn, so to speak, and there's going to be a time of peace and safety and revival towards Christian faith and values, are misleading the flock. Because deception is going to grow. There's going to be a great falling away. It does not say there's going to be a great build-up and a great return to the truth. That doesn't happen until the true Christ comes. So all of these false prophets out there prophesying in their own name and not backing off whenever their prophecies fall flat on their face are being deceived. And I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people with more conservatively aimed talk shows on YouTube and other places are also being deceived. Because even though they're in the political spectrum rather than the religious, moreover, they're still speaking the same nonsense. You know, there's going to be all these things happen. There's going to be all these arrests. All the corruption is going to be taken away. All the evil is going to be taken away. That's what I keep hearing. And that's what I'm hearing from these prophets. There's going to be a time of justice. There's going to be a time of removing all the evil. There's going to be a new golden era. There's going to be a great revival. There's going to be a lot of people coming to the Lord. Now, what they're going to be going to is the false Lord. Because the Bible tells us that things are going to get worse. That iniquity is going to grow. The transgressors are going to come to the full. They're not going to let go their hold. The Kenites are not going to give up their dream of one world government and building their place for their father, their temple over there in Israel. They're not going to change the outcome. The outcome will always be the same. God has spoken it, God has purposed it, and it shall be. And it matters not what party is in power or what group of Christianity, so-called, is got the reins of power in the earth. What denomination, in other words, or what faction. The same events are going to happen. We are going into global government. First, political. Then there's going to be a deadly wound. The two witnesses are going to show up. Probably before the deadly wound, quite frankly. I would say yes. And then the Antichrist is going to come and heal the deadly wound, and then the beast is going to become religious. It's going to become the harlot of Babylon. Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots and abominations of the world. The biggest abomination ever seen. It's not going to be some great revival, not going to be some golden era. It's not going to be that until the return of the true Christ at the seventh and final trump. And these people that are telling you that Christ returns after all of this is over and sets up his kingdom, see, that's a new thing that they're starting to play at now, which has just risen up not too long ago. They're saying Christ is going to come without warning and collect his church. Then the people are going to suffer 7 years of tribulation, and then Christ is going to return. And they say it fits perfectly. You know, they even have names for their little prophecies. You know, Bereshit, or other things like that. And, you know, as a teacher of our Father's Word, as a seed planter, as someone who's done quite a lot of study and has read the Bible through a few times, I'll say, and has studied in the Greek and Hebrew, and has asked, and I do believe been given a lot of truth from our Father's Word, I don't see these things happening that these so-called prophets are telling you are going to happen. I mean, first of all, when they were claiming that the president was going to serve 2 terms consecutively, and they didn't say in 2024, they said this year, in 2020. First of all, they said on January 20th, Trump will be reelected. Okay, that didn't happen. Biden was put into office. So that prophecy fell flat on its face. Now they're saying that it's still yet to happen. It's still going to happen. They're saying we're going to have 2 presidents. There are claims of a civil war. There's claims of a lot of things. Brothers and sisters, put your faith in the Word of God and in Christ. Don't put your faith in people that look to be honest. I mean, listening to these people, you can tell that they have conviction. You can tell that they may even believe what they're saying. They will look you straight in the camera eye, and they seem to be so humble. They say, don't just believe me. You know, they say the same things most anyone who's humble would say. They'll say it's not me, it's God. But then they proceed to tell you that God said this, God said that, God said the other. I've got a word from the Lord. The Lord gave me this prophecy. The Lord showed me this. God took me there. God took me to the future, and I saw it. And then, when it doesn't come to pass, what happened to their being taken to the future and seeing it? Oh, well, now they've misunderstood it. I've even heard a couple of these people saying, I am working on this. I am being coached into being a prophet. Again, you're not coached into being a prophet. You are not a prophet unless God chooses you. You don't become a prophet by seminary, by going to church, or by anything else. You don't even become a prophet by studying our Father's Word. Okay? You are only a prophet if God chooses you, and you are only a prophet if the prophecies that you prophesy come to pass. Now, people will argue and say, well, what about the people that had, how about Daniel? His prophecies are thousands of years away. You know, or at the time that he gave them were 1,000 years away. What if these people prophesying today are speaking the truth, but it's just not for now, it's for much later in the future? Well, how long do you think the generation of the fig tree is going to go on, friend? I mean, don't you see the world around you and what's going on? Don't you see the upheaval? Don't you see the war of classes, the divisions between race, the divisions in the churches? Don't you see what's going on in politics? Don't you see the 4 hidden dynasties? How long do you think God's going to suffer that? At any rate, that's where I'm going to end this Bible study. Let me remind you to study to show yourself approved. Use the tools afforded to us to study our Father's Word. In other words, the tools that God gave us, the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, the J.P. Green's Interlinear, the Smith's Bible Dictionary, the E.W. Bullinger Companion Bible, the Septuagint, whatever study tools you can get your hands on. But when you study, first and foremost, pray to our Father and ask Him for guidance and wisdom. Ask and it shall be given you. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. God wants to give you the truth. But it's not going to come to you from false prophets. And I don't care how many of them sit around on teleconferencers and agree with each other. And I don't care how many of them say that this is going to come to pass and there are things happening that you just don't see. You know, it's a foregone conclusion that the media is lying to us. It's a foregone conclusion that the election was stolen from Trump by Biden. It's a foregone conclusion that there is corruption, and there has always been corruption. But what is not foregone is that people that get up and prophesy and fall flat on their face don't ratchet it back, but keep going forward and say, no, it's still going to happen. No, it's still going to happen. And they're building you towards the rapture. They're building you towards a lie, telling you there's going to be a great time. There's going to be peace. There's going to be safety. There's going to be a time of revolution. And Christians are going to have the upper hand for a change. And sin's not going to be here. Well, that ain't going to happen. So again, I'm calling BS on their prophecies. With that said, always remember to pray for those that walk in darkness, because especially now, there is sure a lot of people walking in darkness. Pray for each other, love one another, practice brotherly love, and above all, like I said, stay in your Father's Word as much as you can. We're now getting down to the last few yards of this race. So, make sure you stay on guard, stay on watch, and be ready in the proper way to greet your King when He comes. Don't fall to the false one. Till we see you again, may God bless you, and thank you for listening. This has been Just Thoughts.